Hi everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Chaos Head. But it wouldn't be strange if she appeared before me at this very moment, wearing an expression akin to that of a no mask. My instincts urged me onward. Run away. You have to run. Run, Luke, run! Run to Dagobah. Hey, looks like they translated what this guy was holding. That king of terror is chosen city. From the city, I guess. I sank weakly onto the ground on the overhead bridge by Miasta Park. My throat was dry from too much running. I wanted to drink an icy cold Coke. Jesus. But I didn't catch the sight of any vending machines in the area. Would I be okay, having come this far? No, don't get caught off guard. I still didn't neglect being wary of my surroundings. There'd be few people in Miasta Park at night, was what I thought, but surprisingly it seemed that was not the case. Salarymen were walking hurriedly as they took shortcuts through the park. An old dude sitting on a bench and toying with a cell phone. Several homeless people sitting down and zoning out. And the person in blue who was speaking with one of the homeless was a police officer. The police. My breath caught. Come to think of it, I'd been questioned by a pair of detectives before. I hadn't heard from them since then, though they'd said they would guard the vicinity around my base. I hadn't picked up on any of the sort. According to Mizumi, they'd also come to investigate at school. Those two detectives, what had they been called? I couldn't remember their names. I told those guys exactly what I witnessed at the scene of the staking incident, but thinking back over it, I came to believe that they'd been looking at me with blatant distrust. I had the feeling that the officer talking to the homeless man was just started to glance at me. Surely not. No, it was just my imagination. There was no way the police could possibly suspect me. After all, I hadn't killed anyone and was a harmless fly. For the moment, I might as well rest here a little longer. My pulse was still racing. As I aimlessly looked up at the night sky, and I inhaled and exhaled shallow breaths. I didn't see any stars. The man-made lights blazing above ground made it seem as though Shibuya's skies were covered by a thin veil. It blocked out the starlight that had traveled for decades or centuries to get here, transforming the night sky into a faceless blackness. What a cheap-looking sky, but it was normal for Shibuya. To me, someone living in Shibuya, this was my sky. I returned my line of sight to the police officer. Doing so gave me a start. The officer was walking over this way. I better be careful not to meet his eyes. Standing up, I took a look at the road under the overhead bridge. Footsteps steadily approached me. In my heart, I prayed for him to pass me by. But
Kimi.
He spoke. He was clearly referring to me. My heartbeat, which I'd been working on reining in the whole while, went wild again. This time because of my tension.
すいません。急いでるんで。
そうは見えないな。
Why had spoken to me? I listed the possible reasons in my head. 1, because I'm alone at a place like this at night. 2, because I seem like a suspicious character. Can't go without the odds. 3, because he's questioning everyone where he comes across in the line of duty. 4, because the police view me as a suspect in the new gen cases.
身分を証明するもの。そうだな。生徒手帳を見せてくれないか。
Damn it. I didn't have the time to go along with this. I had to hide somewhere less conspicuous as soon as possible, otherwise you would find me again. But if I ran away from the officer, I might get arrested for obstruction of justice. Worse still, if four on my list was the reason, running away would force me into an even more dire position. In any case, I had to be fast about getting the stuff with the police officer over with. I reluctantly took my student handbook out of my uniform's inner pocket and passed it over to the uniform officer. Accepting it, he opened it up to confirm my name and headshot. Directly after his countenance changed, his expression twitched. What was it? Why had he reacted like that? Was my name that much of a problem? Maybe I was being made into the new gen suspect after all. But that was a policeman's misunderstanding. I hadn't done it. Yo had decided I was a murderer. I simply wasn't aware of it myself. Impossible. I'm not a sleepwalker. I don't have multiple personalities. I've had enough of people screwing around with me. Unexpectedly, the police officer returned my student handbook right away. And swiftly, as though he were fleeing... What? Fleeing me? He headed back toward the park. That's weird. There was something suggestive about his attitude. I had an amazingly bad feeling about this. Was I really an object of suspicion? I stared at the officer from behind. He gave a little nod to the older man sitting on a bench, or so it appeared. Strange. Was I imagining things? But he had definitely looked in the direction of the guy on the bench. I couldn't determine whether he had actually lowered his head or had simply seemed to do so. The police officer went on his way out of the park. The geezer on the bench went on messing around with his cell phone, or so it appeared. But his fingers weren't moving, or at least they appeared not to be. It was dark, making it all hard to tell either way. Normally the phone's LCD display would give off some light, but the old guy's hands remained shadowed. Something was strange. I began paying careful attention to the other people in the park. One of the homeless men was sitting apart from the rest at the base of a big tree. He didn't move an inch. He had a weird signboard with him, but his face had been pointing down the whole time. The three homeless who were in front of a shed covered by a tarp didn't appear to be having much of a conversation. All they did was sit there in a circle. One of them put his hand to his mouth. Wow, I can read. He covered his mouth with the end of his sleeve and his hand in a manner that looked almost deliberate, or so it appeared. I couldn't tell for sure, but it was strange. A peculiar tension floated in the air of this park, though even that might have been a figment of my imagination. Don't tell me. Every single person here is an undercover detective or something. I shuddered when that vision arose in my head. I desperately told myself that in the end it was only a delusion. But in any case, I didn't want to stay here any longer. I'll escape. I started running. I crossed the bridge, reaching the stairs that led down to Meiji Avenue. I stopped right in front of them and looked back at the park. The older man from the bench had stood up. None of the others were moving. The geezer's body was facing my direction, but he had turned his face off to the side. He was beginning to walk this way. I sensed that his pace seemed a little fast. He was chasing me. That geezer was a detective. His stature looked awfully brawny to boot. I couldn't tell what his occupation was to begin with. His outward appearance made it impossible to come up with a guess. That alone wasn't enough to let me determine whether or not he was a detective. No, he was a detective. He was obviously a detective. He was tailing me. I'd be in deep shit if I stayed here. I ran down the stairs. Shit. To think that I'd be chased not just by Yua, but also by the police. Top of that, it wasn't my fault. I hadn't done a thing. Oh, that's a creepy shot. To me that's really creepy. Should I assert my innocence? But the fact of the matter was that I was fleeing the police right now. Besides, the police would probably come up with some random reasons to attach a crime to my name. Anyway. They couldn't believe a creepy article like me. I didn't have the room to think about what would become of me from here on out. Of got to escape from you as police for now. That feeling alone seized control of my spirit. I went under the railroad overpass and climbed the stairs to the pedestrian bridge. There were a lot of people everywhere I went, blocking my path. It nearly made me think they were hostile toward me. That they were getting in my way on purpose. Everyone started to look like a detective. I was on the brink of panicking. When I turned around, I spotted someone running after me. I caught a glimpse of a figure cutting out its way through the crowd in the same way I had. It was one of the guys from the park. I didn't know which. Anyhow, they were chasing me. The thought of it made me go cold. My life would be all but over if they caught me. I'd receive a death sentence for something I hadn't even done. I got stuck in prison for multiple decades. After I tasted my fill of a living hell, they'd finally tell me, "Alright, it's about time for you to die." Anything but that. I wouldn't be able to take it. I didn't want to live a life like that. Even if I managed to prove my innocence at the very end, and an invisible brand of criminality wouldn't vanish from me, everyone around me would be suspicious of me. Anything but that. I hadn't done a thing. Upon entering a small road with virtually no other pedestrian traffic, I ran even more frantically. Frantic eyes. Okay. But because I'd been running almost the whole time since leaving Ad Cafe, I couldn't keep breathing. My lungs sought oxygen. My legs were shaky with exhaustion. Now that things had come to this, it was too late for me to regret not having exercised anymore. At last, losing the ability to run, I halted in place and fell to my hands and knees. I was in a familiar place. Outer walls, made of distinctive red brick, a giant illuminated sign at Gigantes. I've been here once before, together with Missimi. At the time, I'd come here to hear Phantasm perform live, or more accurately, to see their vocalist, Fess. Now it was utterly quiet and empty of human presence, and only the light of the vending machine in front of the building feebly illuminated the area. Irritated at how my breathing refused to go back to normal, I looked over at my shoulder at the street I'd run down. A dim, narrow road. A train on the Tokyo-Yokohama line decelerated as it passed close overhead, and the light spilling out from its windows was particularly eye-catching, but even that illumination failed to reach the road directly below it. I squinted at the end of the street. Had I managed to shake off the police in Yua? It was too dark for me to tell. Oh shit, that's Yua. The female voice that brushed my ear without warning made me scream pathetically and whirl around. It's probably Fess. Yep. The one standing there was Fess, garbed in the flashy clothes meant for her live shows. As she stood quietly in the darkness looking down at me, her form lacked the erupting power it held on stage, and instead appeared ephemeral. Since it was dim, I couldn't scope out her expression. While I remained stupefied by surprise, Fess quietly extended a hand toward me. Her tone was disinterested. Wow. But she gave off the sense that she wouldn't let me say no. Still holding out her hand, Fess slowly turned her head and narrowed her eyes, as if to see through the darkness. That expression is fucked up. Why? Did she know I was fleeing from you and the police? I was wary of her for a second, but right now she was literally offering me a helping hand. And so I clutched at Fess's hand. It was cool to the touch. As soon as I stood up, Fess started running. In my state of irrevocable exhaustion, nothing could have seemed more hateful. But if Fess hadn't been there, I might have failed to stand up again and stayed there until the police caught up with me. If possible, I wanted to rehydrate, but I understood that we couldn't afford to do that. Fess continued steadily, pulling at my hand. We entered narrow alleys and turned at countless intersections. I had absolutely no clue where I was running. Even under normal circumstances, I had little knowledge of the lay of land in Shibuya. At this point, I had no choice but to go wherever Fest took me. What if this too was a trap laid by Shogun? I started to think, but I shook my head to rid myself of such thoughts. Even if Fest were working under Shogun, there was nothing I could do about it anymore. Lactic acid had built up in my feet, making them heavier, and my consciousness was wavering, as if running too much were keeping enough oxygen from reaching my brain. I was on the brink of whining things like, I can't run anymore. Maybe I had unconsciously blurted it out countless times already. Even so, Fest devoted herself to continuing forward, without looking back at me once. Before I knew it, we'd come out of the road with the Shuto Expressway running overhead. Though Shibuya Station was right in front of Arise, there weren't many people around here. Without a moment's hesitation, Fest began descending the stairs that led to a yawning underground opening. We stopped at last upon reaching the bottom of the stairs. Wheezing, I let go of Fest's hand and sank into a crouch on the stairs. I wondered exactly how much I'd run today. It might be the first time in my whole life that I'd performed such physical activity. For some time, all that could be heard in the dim subway of its melancholic ambience was the sound of Fest and I breathing. I looked up in the direction of the entrance we'd come down from, but I couldn't detect any pursuers. Did that mean we'd somehow managed to escape them? Even so, it was the first time I heard of this part of the subway. Plus, it should have been pretty close to the train station, but there wasn't a single person passing through. One of the fluorescent lights illuminating the tunnel was on the verge of dying out, and it busily blinked on and off. A smell like raw garbage rotting floated faintly in the air. It was the sort of place that symbolized Shibuya's underside. If someone attacked me here, my voice might not reach the outside, no matter how much I shouted. It wasn't a place I wanted to visit alone. As I went on breathing even harder, I took a peek at Fest's profile. The charismatic diva of the indie music scene, who even now was making the young people of Shibuya go crazy about her, a person they called a prophetess. That Fest was together with a gross otaku bastard like me. It felt kind of strange somehow. Sweat seeped out of her forehead and ran in droplets down her cheeks. She wiped it off with the flat of her hand. Each time she breathed, her chest rose and fell, peeking out of her camisole. A healthy sexiness lay hidden hidden behind her atmosphere of ennui. Boy, no, that wasn't quite it. As I thought at first, sexy would be a more appropriate description if I were to put it in words. That camisole, with the design of a cross applied to it, was downright criminal. It really is. No matter how I ponder at the matter, it didn't look like she was wearing a bra beneath it. Could she be braless? Oh, yes, she could. I wonder what kind of lingerie Fest normally wore. Probably the sex type, black or red maybe. But personally, I'd want to see her wearing something white, and therefore neat and clean looking. Hey, what kind of moronic stuff am I thinking about at a time like this? I nodded in answer. He was also chasing me in addition to the police, but I was too exhausted to have any energy left to explain this. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? New Gen. The lyrics Fest had written and content of the sequence of cases matched all up almost perfectly. Which was why her fans were shouting those rumors from the rooftops that Fess was a prophetess.
私疑われてるみたい。
As a new gen criminal? It had been the same at the first time I saw Phantasm's lyrics. To the point that I wondered if Fess were Shogun. But when I thought about the fact that she'd saved me, it made me guess that maybe things were a little different. Even so, why had Fess been there? Her saving me had just been coincidental. Yeah, that's right. Considering that the club she performed at had been right in front of my eyes, she must have had a show today as well, after all.
君が追われてるのはなぜ？何か悪いことでもしたの？
チクられた。あの女、僕のことチクったんだ。ニュージェネの犯人にされる。
It was attempting to frame me. Damn it. Thanks to her and Shogun, my life was on the brink of destruction.
そう。容疑者候補ね。私たち。
You could say that? How can you laugh about it?
僕は無実だ。
I grew overexcited and shouted. My voice echoed loudly through the subway tunnel, but I couldn't stop myself.
事件を目撃しただけだ。証拠品を勝手に持ち帰っちゃったけど、それだけ。
You're going apeshit.
僕殺してない。
それなら。
Fess murmured, returning to her indifferent tone.
きっとそれは導きなのよ。
Right, don't forget she actually had that sword with her on stage as well last time.
大いなる存在による。
Another mental patient? Another Holden Caulfield?
君の見たものが事実だったか幻だったかは些細なこと。
That brutal spectacle had been an illusion. Was that even a possibility? It seemed so very real.
君が今抱いている苦しみや怒りは必要なものだったということよ。
What was she saying? How disappointing. I'd sort of sensed it when I went to her concert, but Fess really was quite the tinfoil hat type. They say geniuses and lovers are just a hair's width away from madness. But
だから早く見つけて。
see, she's also telling you to find a D sword.
剣を
Knew it. My breath caught. Before this, when we met at school, Fess had said to me, "Finding your sword will save you." Fess had seen the same thing before. It scared me far more than the police were Shogun and his underlings. I didn't know why, but they were clearly and maliciously attempting to set me up. What I needed to save myself from their menace was... What I needed to protect myself was...
ディソード。
そうよ。
Fess's lips contorted in the shape of a smile.
勉強したみたいね。
それなら手に入れた。僕はディソードを持ってる。今家に。
知ってるわ。
She knew? How'd she know?
見たから。君が渋谷のど真ん中を歩いていたのを大きなおもちゃを抱きしめて恥ずかしそうにしてたわね。
She was talking about the day I brought the D sword. To think that Fess had seen me. Now hold on a second. What had Fess just said? Toy sword?
おもちゃ。
The smile had already vanished from Fess's face. She gave me a short glance and let out a light sigh. Her attitude was so listless, it started to make me feel insecure.
偽物。 だと思うわ。あなたの買った剣は。
I wasn't all that surprised. I could have predicted it. Compared to Senna's sword and the one I bought, simply too cheap. It didn't shine. Anyway, given that it was a sword so amazing that Fess had claimed it would bring me salvation, the prospect of finding it being sold for 10,000 yen along with other toys for grown-ups was far too lacking in romance. Which was why I wasn't surprised. Instead, a tumultuous fury surged inside me. Fury at the glum-looking female clerk who deceived me. Fury at my pathetic self for being deceived. Fury at Fess for insinuating this and that without giving me clear answers. I stood up and drew closer to Fess. Something my normal self would have never been capable of, but right now I was desperate. Until a short while ago, I'd been exposed to the overwhelming terror of being pursued by you and the police. Not only that, I'd experienced countless unpleasant emotions over a short span of this past month. I'd had more than enough. In order to return to my peaceful lifestyle, I had to get my hands on a sword, no matter what. Her expression stiffening, Fess turned to face me again and said, "Oh boy, here we go. Get my cursor off screen." She deliberately thrust her right palm in front of my eyes. Stopping me from coming any nearer, she curled her right hand into a fist. When she swung it all the way behind her, together with the sound of akin to glass shattering, cracks broke their way through empty space. My eyes went wide. I was speechless. Fess focused on me without the slightest change in expression. A deep darkness spread out in the depths of the fissures in the broken space. This time, Fess whipped out the hand that lay buried between those fissures. Well, in it she gripped a colossal sword. The crevices in space instantly repaired themselves. The cracks had vanished as though nothing had happened. It took mere seconds. Was this sleight of hand or another delusion? It was too distant from reality. I couldn't believe what just occurred in front of my eyes. This was pure fantasy. Something from an anime. That sword was what Fess had slashed around during her show. What I had mistaken for a mic stand. And its shape was almost reminiscent of a sci-fi anime battleship. Oh shit. It possessed not a single straight line. Does it? Seems legit. Also, I'd say that's a straight line. Yet brimmed with a sense of sharpness. And was lovely. And sinister. It seemed as though my fingers would be vividly sliced off if I touched it. Fess's D-sword. It fascinated me. And so I asked her without thinking. A parallel world. Things were finally taking a firm turn toward the anime-esque. The
同一次元上にあるもう一つの可能性。 What?
「
What? 同一次元上にあるもう一つの可能性。
」
「
「
What? 」
「
「 What? あるいは妄想。
A delusion?
言い方にあまり意味はないわ。唯一確かなの。この剣もその領域に存在しているということ。
So in other words, the D-sword was the product of Fest's delusions. The paranormal phenomenon I'd witnessed earlier had also been delusionary. It wasn't present in reality.
そんなのありえない。
そう。
If it were just a delusion, how come I could see Fest's sword right now?
言葉に引きずられてはダメよ。後ろを振り返ってみて。
Oh God. Bewildered by Fest's abrupt demand, I obeyed her. Behind me were the stairs, and there... Okay. Alright. Alright. I can dig it. Fest stood right there, wearing only white lingerie. There was Fest beside me, and there was another Fest in front of the stairs. Two of the same human beings were in this place. On top of that, one of them was clad in the sexy getup of her underwear and nothing else. Becoming completely flustered, I looked back and forth between the two faces over and over. From the shape of their faces to their stature and even their hairstyle, they were exactly the same. The only difference between them was their clothing, and the fact that only one bore a sword. It wasn't at the level where you could mistake them for twins. They didn't merely resemble each other. They were one and the same. I was used to seeing lingerie-wearing girls in Aragon, but that didn't give me any room to settle down here. Long ago, I'd glimpsed at Nanami's childish underwear scores of times. But that didn't allow me to assume a philosophical attitude and act like it didn't make a difference to me either way. Fess was standing up in this filthy subway in her lingerie. The sheer improbability of the situation made my head go dizzy. Even if I thought to myself that I shouldn't look, my line of sight kept darting back toward her. It required a pretty big effort to lower my eyes and prevent myself from seeing her.
ごめん。
Before I knew it, I apologized. Because I dreamed about it only a few minutes ago. About Fess wearing white lingerie. Wait a second.
君が望んだ妄想。
Exactly. Two Fests spoke simultaneously, as though they had seen right through me. I flinched. I could tell my face was rapidly turning red. I had to make some kind of excuse. I had to distract her. Once 3D girls labeled me a pervert, it'd be the end for me. I'd undergo social obliteration. No, that was too important. That was important too. But even more important was the question of what the hell was the phenomenon currently occurring before me. What the heck? Well, that seems like a great place to stop. Save. Alright, thank you for watching. And this is actually, sadly, the only episode I can record today. Because, I want to make some kind of picture for my dad. Because it's his final day of work today. He's going into retirement. Congratulations, Dad. Future reference for myself, it's Sunday the 28th of October 2012 and my dad just had his last day of work and he's coming home in 4 hours. So congratulations to you, Dad. And to you, Flocker Dude, who's probably watching this in 2050. Well, it was nice knowing him, wasn't it? Thank you very much for watching. And thank you to everyone who joined me in the vote for the Halloween game I should do this year. It was kind of a huge success. Well, huge success being 9 votes. Still, very good. Any vote counts. And I want to thank you all. It's great to have you guys, and I really appreciate what you've done for me so far. Now, I'd say you won't be seeing any new videos from me until Halloween itself, or later, unless it's One Piece. So, I'd like to tell you, enjoy your Halloween, and go kill someone! Yay! See you next week.